Now, when you're leading a race and the car in P2 stops, it's completely normal that you make sure you cover that, because that is how you hold track position.
Hi, I'm Jodie, and joining us today we have Shove to answer your questions from the Belgian Grand Prix for the Akkodis Race Debrief. So, Shove, to start us off with the question that's on everyone's lips, what is it that happened with George's car and why did it come in underweight?
Obviously very disappointing and unfortunate, particularly after he'd driven such a strong race to win from so far back. Right now we're trying to understand exactly what happened. A lot of that involves us getting the weights of all the different components, and the car can lose quite a lot of weight during the race. You get tyre wear, plank wear, brake wear, oil consumption. The driver themselves can lose a lot, and in this particular race George lost quite a bit of weight. Now, the cars started the race the same weight. Lewis and George were both weighed after qualifying. Cars were within 500 grams. George's was the only one that had the problem, and it's because things like the tyre wear was much higher. It looks like we lost more material on the plank. We'll collect all that data though, look at how we can refine our processes, because clearly we don't want that to happen in the future.
So, what would have been the impact of George being underweight?
In terms of pace, at the start of the race, it's nil, because George's car and Lewis's car start the race at the same weight. Now, obviously, as George's car was losing weight faster than Lewis's throughout the race, there is a associated gain with that, but you're into the hundredths of a second per lap. It'll be very small, because when you're talking about amounts like 1 or 2 kilos, they don't amount to a lot of lap time. But as I said, start of the race, cars were the same weight.
So obviously it was a very unfortunate ending to the weekend, but we are still here in our winners t-shirt, still got that race win. So how is the team feeling overall?
I mean, it was very much a bittersweet moment. It was a fantastic finish to the race. To get the cars home 1-2 was a real achievement, particularly because we'd had such a difficult Friday. But overall, I mean, aside from the disappointment, the team's really encouraged by the performance. It was a great turnaround by the engineering team to get the car sorted out to perform so well in the race. It was also encouraging for us that hot circuits have not been our strength this year, but the track was pretty hot there in Belgium, and we were able to perform really well, particularly on the long run. George obviously did one of the longest stints of anyone. So plenty of positives. Yeah, just a shame that we couldn't keep the result.
You mentioned about George doing one of the longest stints. Why is it that George opted to do that one-stop strategy with Lewis opting to take the 2?
I mean, it was a decision that was taken by the strategy team, but in Lewis's case, it was a fairly simple decision to make his pit stop, because he was leading the race. He had Leclerc behind. Now, Leclerc wasn't within undercut range, but when he stopped on fresh rubber, he would have undercut us if we hadn't brought Lewis in. Now, when you're leading a race and the car in P2 stops, it's completely normal that you make sure you cover that, because that is how you hold track position, and he was one of the significant threats. Now, the situation with George, well, he didn't really have as much to lose. So had we stopped George at about that same point as we did Lewis, he was forecast to finish somewhere around 5th or 6th place. Maybe he would have got 4th. We were expecting him to be able to get Sergio, but he was still in that same battle that he was in before with Max, with Lando. If we stayed out longer, that was what would then put George in contention for a podium position. Now, he was very helpfully saying to us, the tyres have stabilised, they don't feel like they're dropping, can I keep going? He'd asked us whether the one-stop strategy was actually on the cards, which from the wear that we had seen in the earlier stops and in Lewis's middle stint, we could see that it was viable, that you'd be able to get to the end of the race with rubber, and he obviously did a great job hanging on to them. So it wasn't our plan on Sunday morning to do that strategy, but it was a good reaction by the strategy team and by George himself during the race to adapt to what we were seeing, the lower degradation, and capitalise on that.
So obviously there was a massive amount of roller coaster emotions, but taking the silver linings away from that, we've opted to not use some of the updates, but we'll be reinstalling those now when we come back for the Netherlands.
We are planning to do that. Now, the reason that we removed that, and we essentially reverted the car to the Silverstone spec on Friday night, we did that because we had a good race in Silverstone. Spa and Silverstone are not dramatically different circuits in terms of the corner speed range that you're dealing with. We'd clearly introduced some problems somewhere. We think that was largely due to how we were running the car in Spa, not induced by the updates themselves. That was obviously giving us a bit of bouncing in the high-speed corners, a few issues with the balance. Going to that Silverstone car got it all back to normal. We've since had time to look at the data to understand what it was we did exactly, and knowing that, we're pretty confident that we'll be going for a reintroduction in Zandvoort.
So when we first came in on Friday, we weren't looking as competitive. So why was there such a turnaround from Friday through into the Sunday?
One of the issues with Spa is it's a fast circuit and it needs a lot of commitment from the driver. Now, we managed to introduce a bit of bouncing to the car. So in the high-speed corners, that's not great for their confidence. And there were a couple of other balance issues where they had a lack of entry stability. When you're wanting to brake late, carry speed into a corner, that doesn't help. Now, at a normal track, that might have cost us a little bit of time, but you look at it on a big circuit like Spa with some pretty big corners, that was becoming a large number. So I think, yes, the car wasn't in the right place, but as I said, it's one of those very specific things about Spa where if the drivers haven't got the car doing what they want, it can cost them a lot of performance, and it was exactly the right thing for us to just revert to that known specification.
So, Shov, it's been an intense first start of the season. We've seen 14 races before us now, so we're heading into the summer break. How would you summarise the first half of the season?
Well, I think the main thing is the progress. Where we were in the early races in Bahrain, in Jeddah, it was difficult to look at the car and understand what it was you had to do to make it quick. We could see it had certain strengths, but it also had plenty of weaknesses. Now, the team has responded brilliantly to that challenge. We know where we want to get to in terms of performance level. We knew that we wanted to be winning races, and we set ourselves a target of, by the end of the season, we wanted to be qualifying on pole and winning races. Now, the last 4 races, we've had 3 wins in that. We've had 6 podiums on the trot. That's perhaps been more than we'd expected at that point. But as I said, we're really enjoying the racing now. We're enjoying the challenge. It feels like the team has a bit of momentum behind it, and we're hoping that we can carry that into the final bit of the season, continue to develop, and hopefully continue to win some races.